are you doing, Miss Michelle Toler?
I am doing fabulous. This has been awesome. It seems like I just uh, got in on some great information from Mr. Jerry Smith. I'm doing great, and you look fabulous.
Well, I try. I try to keep up with you. I try to keep up with you. I didn't want to get on here and be like, Chelly's like, what are you doing? So I tried to get myself together and make sure that we are able to finish strong. It's been an amazing, amazing day. Most of the people have hung out with us all day. They have been on here since 10:30 this morning, soaking up information, and they're still here because this group is passionate about taking action and improving their situation. So we've talked about our spiritual life and leveling up there with Dr. Kim. We've talked about, hey, if you've got a dream in your heart to write a book or start the business or get healthy, you need to do that. We talked about launching an online business. We talked about real estate, and you came in on Jeremy talking about how to improve our own personal economy. And I know for many people, in addition to what Jerry shared, they have some questions about this stock market and their retirement accounts and all this stuff that looks like it can look kind of ugly. If you're looking at it on a regular basis, it can create fear and panic in the minds of people. And so what I want to make sure that we do today is that we help equip and empower them so that they know some of the things that you know about this industry, having been in it for so long and being licensed and knowing all of the ins and outs. Because you have that knowledge, you are able to look at things with a different perspective. And as Jeremy shared with us, people perish for a lack of vision and knowledge. So we're hoping to impart some nuggets in our audience today as we prepare to wrap up that's going to help them to be able to look at things a little bit differently. So thank you so much again for being here. And I think it's important. We've done this with each of our panelists for people to know why you do what you do. There's some people that are in the business of helping people with money, but their main focus is making money, right? And we all need to make a living. We all got goals, right? But I know that it's bigger than that for you. So tell our audience, what inspired you to get into this business of helping people with their finances?
Oh man, that's such a great question. And I think that all of us have milestones or things that occur in our life that really put us in a trajectory to fulfill what I call is your life mission. And so at the age of 8, I believe that that's when that light bulb came off. At the age of 8, my sister was 13, and my father, who my mother was separated from at the time, he went into work on June 1st, and by June 15th of Father's Day, my mother received a call stating that he was no longer on this earth. And so from that time, when my mother laid my father to rest out in Caroline County here in Virginia, it cost a little over $5,000 back in '95 to bury my father and just giving him a basic burial. But shortly after that, I saw the financial burden that it created on my mother, because a $400 Social Security check most certainly can't take care of an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old. And so I saw my mother get into a rat race. I began to notice at the age of 8 the importance of financial education, the importance of legacy, and understanding why this thing called money, this adult conversation that we were always taught never to talk about, this boogeyman in the room, why it was important to talk about, why it was important to understand generational wealth and leaving a legacy for our children's children, because unfortunately, that wasn't something that we were afforded. So that is the reason that I got into this industry. And as I began to develop within my goals in the ministry that God had laid on my heart to work with young ladies, I realized that it took economic resources to accomplish those things. And so I began to seek out and wanted to acquire more of that knowledge, and especially why we aren't leaving financial legacies in our communities as middle-income Americans. And it normally boils down to the lack of knowledge, which is what Mr. Jerry in the Bible says. We perish from it. But it also says that it's because we rejected truth. So I wanted to know truth. I wanted to have the assurance of the understanding of what it meant to be a good steward over what it was that we had. So that's how I found myself in this industry.
Wow. Wow. I can't imagine what it was like as an 8-year-old to see that and the impact that it's had on you. But the good news is that you were able to see that experience and make a decision for yourself. Hey, I want to do something different and not just do it for me, but I want to help other people not have to go through what my mom went through. So let's talk about this because we've talked about a number of topics today. And everyone who's here and is hanging in here with us is at least thinking about making some different decisions in terms of how they manage their money. Why do you, from your perspective, why is it so important with all the different things that they could be focused on right now that they focus on this? Why is it a top priority, or should it be a top priority from your perspective?
It absolutely should be a top priority. And this is the deal. Uh, the issues and the concerns that investors or individuals that desire to be investors and understand their portfolio and how to grow their money, the dates might change, but the scenarios and the situations don't, right? And so when we think about the individuals that are on this webinar this afternoon, none of us were around during the Great Depression. We've only heard about it in books. We've heard about it in the history. But because we are here today and it is 2020, then that means that we were able to survive that. And so out of that, that's where wealth came from. So it's extremely important for us to understand what's happening because history, if we're not careful, it does repeat itself. And so when we understand, when we know better, we do better. So this is a opportune time for us to be able to embrace this and say, you know, this isn't the first time an emergency is going to come up. This isn't the first time that a pandemic is going to happen. And so what do I need to do in order to play it smart and make sure that my family doesn't have to feel the same financial blows or effects as what we might have previously had prior to us gaining knowledge?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's the time is now to do it now, right? Not just for ourselves, but for those that we will impact. Now, you mentioned, you know, this is not the first time crisis has hit. You know, there's certainly, we've heard about the Great Depression and all of those impacts, but we have had some hiccups along the way. You know, we had 9/11 and the fallout from that. We had the financial crisis in 2008 that hit the country into a bit of a tailspin. But this one feels different, right? Because now we're staying at home. You know, our lifestyle has completely changed, and we continue to hear the numbers about the millions of people that have applied for unemployment. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, like, how are you personally, knowing what you know, how are you making sense of all of this? And what are your initial thoughts about how we should view this pandemic in the lens of our finances?
Oh, so one, I think God has just been telling people, sit down somewhere.
Sat down.
Sit down somewhere. Let me just work on some things. But, you know, I think that for what I know and understand about this industry, I understand that nothing in life is a straight line. And for many of us that are either business owners or, you know, even if you're working a 9-to-5 job or you're in your career, we understand that life happens, right? Ecclesiastes tells us that there's a time for everything. And so because we know that there's a time for everything, because we understand that there are certain seasons and that things will change, I believe that we can gain a lot of our assurance just from the biblical principles, right? So of course, if there's a winter is harsh, crops die. Some crops, especially depending on what their temperament is. And so we can have the expectation that if there's winter, eventually there's going to be a spring. And then there's going to be a summer. And so I teach my clients in a very practical sense. So when God's word tells us, be like the ant, we know that winter is going to come. And so we don't want to be foolish and gull up all of our resources. We want to make sure that we store and that we reserve. And so we can weather the times because the times are going to happen. Every 7 to 10 years, the market resets itself. We constantly are going through a rotation of what's called the politically correct term, a bear or bull market, right? And so We understand that there will be highs and lows, but you have to maintain that focus and that persistency. So I teach my clients, learn from that farmer. A farmer plants a seed with the intention that it's going to produce a harvest, right? But the farmer also understands that you're going to have other elements that affect that seed. And so you want to continue to be consistent with it, continue to water the seed, don't neglect it. And that's the same way we have to look at our financial goals, our investments. Just be diligent. And those that are diligent and persistent and can stay focused and not get easily distracted by all of the mayhem that is going on, then you will end up reaping a harvest if you don't faint. So it's not for the faint at heart.
Woo, you're going to take me to church. I love the fact that every time we talk about wellness or wealth, it's that scriptural element is so interweaved into what you do. And that's why I know that it's a blessing for our audience, because we have a group of believers on the line here that want to make a difference, not just for themselves, but for those that they have the opportunity to touch. So I love what you said, like this, although it feels new and there are some elements of it that is new, there's a cycle. And I can think back, like, yeah, absolutely. Every 7 to 10 years, at the bare minimum, something is going to happen, right? And so it's kind of like what Jerry talked to us about. Christmas comes every year on December 25th. So we shouldn't be scrambling to figure out what we're going to do for Christmas, right? Because we know it's coming. So if we can train our minds to recognize that every 7 to 10 years, at bare minimum, could be more often, but I should expect something to happen, I think we would have a different perspective on how we view our finances, because we wouldn't think that how it is today is how it's always going to be. We would have the recognition that winter is coming and I need to be prepared for winter.
There's nothing new under the sun, right? So when we understand that, it takes away the fear. The moment that people, we can begin to realize, hey, things might look different. Look at it in a practical sense. I'm very practical when I talk to my clients about money. Music repeats itself, fashion repeats itself. So when we think about the market in times of turmoil and chaos, in the 1930s during the Great Depression, it was mayhem. And people that were living in that moment thought that there was nothing past that moment, because they had that view in mind. And so I teach my clients, don't focus on the tree, think about the forest. Because when you focus on the tree, now that's the only thing that has your attention. Whereas we think about, what is the end goal and objective that I want to accomplish for my financial future? And so then you stick your heels in the ground, right? You got to make sure that you have deep roots. And the oldest trees that are still standing, the oldest pyramids, it was because they were structurally sound to make sure that they could weather the times and whatever went on. Pyramids are still here because of how they built themselves, how they were built. So when we think about that with our money, you want to build it and have that same security, because it'll maintain itself if you don't grow weary in it. So yes, absolutely.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Oh my goodness, so much we could talk about here, but let me stay focused. But when you talked about this bear and bull market, and family, if you have questions, as you have been all day, please take advantage of the chat. Send us those questions in the chat so that we can get Chelly to answer those for us. You talked about this bear and bull market. I'd love for you to define what that means, because not everyone might understand those two terms. And then talk to us about why it's important to manage our emotions. I talked to them a little bit earlier about the importance of checking our emotions at the door, which is so hard for a lot of things. But I think for money, it can really be challenging. I know some people that have been looking at their 401k and their retirement statements, and I've literally told them, do not look anymore because you're going to drive yourself crazy. But it's hard to do, because we want to see, we want to know, and then our emotions can get away from us. So talk to us, what is bear versus bull, and then how do we need to manage our emotions in all of this?
Mm-hmm. Very simple concept that I learned when I began the journey of pursuing my licenses. When you think about bear and bull, okay, bears bring things down, They claw things down. I told you I'm so practical, girl. So bears
I
claw
love it.
things down. So a bear market means the market is going down. Bulls have horns, so they toss things up. So that means the market is going up. So when we're in a bull market, that means that businesses are thriving, right? And that's a great time because now that means that, let's say for an example, you were investing in a company and you purchased shares within a company, okay? Shares and stock really are just equivalent to you becoming partner with someone. So if I wanted to invest in XYZ company and I purchase shares, well, if I'm paying $10 a share and I have, let's say 10 shares, right? So that's $1,000 that I now have based off of that investment, okay? And so let's say that the stock does extremely well. Now, if the stock does well, now that means that my shares could grow from $10 to, let's say they jump to 25. So if I have the same amount of shares that I've purchased, now what that means is that my money has grown because it was a bull market. It went up. But let's say my shares do the reverse and they go from $10 a share to now $5 a share. That's the bear market. So there's been a loss there. So our portfolio in history, it's nothing but a combination of bear and bull markets. So we realize that when we are investing, the reason why we can't be emotional is because in a market where our money is going down, that's the time where we want to continue to do what it is that we're doing. And so if we continue to be consistent, then when the market goes back up, that means now we've gained a return, right? And so, and excuse me, because when I was sharing with you guys, I was thinking about having 100 shares. So it's actually $100. I don't want to throw anybody off with the math, okay? And so that means that if we're consistent with investing, then as the market goes up, now that means that we've made a profit on our portfolio, okay? But when the market goes down, if we continue to be consistent with investing in those particular numbers of shares that we're purchasing with that company, XYZ, now you can look at it almost as though you're buying it discounted, right? So who doesn't like a good sale? So everybody loves a BOGO, okay? So when you think of BOGO, you think of buy one, get one free. So now your shares are discounted. So when you think of it, he who has the most stock at the end of it, he who has the most shares eventually wins the game. So if I were investing in a market when the market was going up, well, my money that I was investing, that $10 a share, it's not able to stretch as far because of the dollar cost that it's costing me, okay? But when it goes down, if I consistently am doing it, now I'm getting those shares at a discounted rate. So I don't want to be emotional when I'm investing. You want to check yourself at the door because when we're emotional, we make irrational decisions. And so when we make irrational decisions, when have irrational decisions ever worked for us? Okay, it's never worked. And so, when you're thinking about investing, when you're thinking about building your financial house, you want to be strategic and not emotional. Okay, and strategy is what helps us to win the game in the long run.
I love that. I love that. Right? You got to be strategic, not emotional. That's impactful. We have a couple of questions. So I want to take a break here and see if we can tackle some of these. So let's see. I purchased a few stocks on Robinhood. I didn't spend a lot, and the market has been up and down. When I purchased, I was stressed watching the market daily, so I pulled myself from watching. Should I wait to purchase anymore? Do you teach on the stock market? So I know you can't provide individual advice, but just a general concept of, is now a good time to buy stocks? If I can train myself, as you said, to be strategic and not emotional, if I do the research and I have maybe having someone to guide me and help me understand what decisions to make, is now a time to take action in the stock market?
It is now and forevermore. It is always the time. And so to answer that question, even in a general sense, the first thing that I always suggest to my clients is start with your initial investments that you have access to. So I would ask the client, listen, are you maxing out your 401k right now? Are you putting into your retirement vehicles on your job? Because when we think about investing or mutual funds is nothing more than pooling your money together amongst other investors and investing back in the global economy. Okay, and so within one mutual fund, when a person has a 401k or a Roth IRA, an individual retirement account, now instead of having one share that you're purchasing, let's say if you go to Robinhood and you purchase a stock in XYZ company. Well, if XYZ company goes bankrupt, if XYZ company goes out of business, right? If XYZ company was Radio Shack, well, then you wouldn't be a happy camper right now because Radio Shack isn't in existence, okay? But what if you had a mutual fund? And through a mutual fund, now your money is being allocated amongst several different investings, several different sectors, several different industries. So one of the things about mutual funds, I definitely don't discourage clients from putting into stock, but stock is one of those things where you're taking 100% of that risk. So you don't really have that cushion. So I strongly encourage my clients that, along with purchasing individual stocks, make sure that you're contributing to your investments, maxing those things out. Depending on your age, you can put into a Roth IRA up to $6,000 a year. So with having a Roth IRA, when we grew up, my papa was a farmer, right? And I'm sure all of us have heard that saying, you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket, okay? So when you think about putting your eggs in one basket, a mutual fund allows some of your eggs over here. So some of your money could be in consumable goods. Some of it could be in technology. Some of it could be in the healthcare field. So the likeliness of a person losing all of their money in a mutual fund, even with what's going on right now, means that 150 to 250 different companies and corporations would have to go broke at the exact same time, meaning that there was no money anywhere, domestically or internationally. So Amazon, Walmart, Disney, Verizon, Comcast, all of those companies would have to go broke at the same time. So with dealing with that emotion and that stress, one, you hit the nail on the head. Don't look at it. I'm 33, you guys, right? I'll be 34 in August. So I've been doing this for 15 going on 16 years. My retirement, your 401ks, your Roth IRAs, you don't even want to touch until you're 59 and a half. I'm 33. Why in the heck am I going to stress myself out looking at something that I'm not even supposed to be worried about until I'm 59 and a half? Okay. So once again, with the market, I understand that it's going to go up and down. So it's no point in me looking at it. But here's the thing about investing. It's appreciating. So if I started off investing and I put a $10,000 into my investment or my mutual fund, and I just let that money sit there and do what it's going to do, compound interest, okay? Then even if once I get to retirement, let's say it goes from 10,000 and then my market grows several years, my portfolio to 50,000. And then from 50,000, it drops down to 30,000. And from 30,000, it goes up to 70,000. Let's say over the course of 20 years, it goes up, it goes down. And by the time I turn 59 and a half, let's say that that portfolio has grown to 350,000. Here's why we have to think about the forest and not the tree. What was my initial investment? My initial investment was $10,000 20 plus years ago. It grew to 350. So it doesn't, if I would have just had that money sitting at a bank, 20 years from now, I would have $10,005.
Right.
So I also, listen, Jesus. So I also tell my clients, listen, where you initially started off, even if your portfolio went down, and I understand what that feeling could feel like, your initial investment was still $10,000. So I would consider that a successful portfolio.
You're still winning. You're still winning because you're way up.
Right? So I
Yeah.
hope that answered your question, Ms.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does. So I'm hearing we're going to take a look at, she does have a 401k and is going to take a look at the Roth IRA. And if you have any other questions, family, keep them coming in the chat. Now, let's talk about a different scenario. You mentioned that you're in your 30s. I'm in my 40s. So we have time on our side. There are some people, though, that may be closer to retirement. And I think from what I can sense, that creates a little more anxiety because I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm almost at the point of retirement, whether it's sometime this year or a couple of years from now. And I made my whole financial plan and my projections based on what I thought I was going to have. And now I'm looking, because I'm not looking. I'm looking at my account and I'm freaking out. Shouldn't they be doing anything differently if they are closer to retirement versus in our situation where we have more time?
Absolutely. So there's a method called rebalancing. And rebalancing, depending on the type of mutual fund that you currently have, some companies or entities, they offer what's called target funds. And so a target fund will project what you should have around that time, given the market trends and the type of investor you are. So here's one of the misconceptions. People typically think that because you get older that you might not still be a more growth or aggressive investor. There are different types of investment profiles. So you have to know what your comfort level is. I have some clients that even if they are in their 30s or 40s, they can't tolerate a lot of loss, okay, from emotional sense, and there's nothing wrong with that. So one, I figure out what type of investor a person is, and as they're nearing retirement, there are also other variables that you have to consider. One, do you have anyone that is financially dependent on you? Are you in a situation where maybe you have some debt? And so, of course, the less debt that you have, the more that you might be able to allow that money to still grow. Because here's the thing about longevity. Even if a person is in their 40s or 50s, the average individual right now, life expectancy for most is about 86. So when you think about it, that still means that you have 40 years. Even if I'm 33 and 55, you still have 40 years that your money needs to make sure that it's consistently coming in. Because hear this, family, you don't want to outlive your money. You want your money to outlive you. So because you don't want to run out of money, that person that's 40 or 50, if we were to sit down and say, okay, who's the oldest person right now within your immediate family? My nana lived to be 91, but my father lost his life at 33, right? And so when I think about there's a potential or possibility for me to live to 86 or 91, okay, well, how do I want to invest my money? And do I immediately need this money? So you can never have too much money put away for retirement. I teach my clients whatever benefits you have on your job, you should always have outside of your job. Max out your 401ks, your 457. Those are tax deferred. Don't really want to get into that portion. But you want to make sure that as you're nearing retirement, you put those things into consideration. With my current 401k or retirement through my job, how much money is about to get taken out in taxes from Uncle Sam? Listen, you can't go live with Uncle Sam. He don't invite you to the barbecue, but don't he take your money, Coach Sam?
Yes, he does. He's going to take that money now. He's going to take that money. He's going to get his money.
So you want to make sure that you're balancing your portfolio to feel that effect, okay? 50-year-old, if you are within retirement, let's put a time frame on it. If you know that you plan on retiring within 5 years, well then no, you definitely don't want to be extremely aggressive within your portfolio. And so within that time, I start shifting my clients to maybe we should look at some other alternatives with investing, looking at annuities so you don't run out of money, making sure that you max your Roth IRA. I continue to say that, Coach Tam, because 95% of the U.S. population could qualify for a Roth IRA. Less than 43% of people put into a Roth IRA because, quite honestly, most people don't know what it is because we've never been taught. So with Roth IRAs, with other investment vehicles, it creates a cushion. You can have what's called, of course, you want to diversify your portfolio. So as you get older, you could start shifting from some stock where now you're in a partnership to now where you get into a credit perspective. And that's what bonds are. So when you think of bond, when we hear people say, oh, I have bonds or I have bonds in my portfolio, think about it this way. Your word is your bond. So when I have a bond, that simply means that instead of giving my money to XYZ company and creating a partnership, a bond means that I'm loaning my money to this company. One is giving, one is loaning, and we understand the difference, okay? And so you're loaning your money. And so as you get older, you can start transitioning where now you go from the partnership perspective to a creditor to the entities and to those institutions. And then you want to make sure that you have your accounts. I call them your 3 accounts: emergency fund, short-term, and wealth account. So that person that's in their 40s or 50s, if you have a short-term vehicle, you could still maintain your portfolio, your investments, but then you can pull from that money. So in those moments when the market's going up and down, you still have that cushion. So you want to pull from buckets so that way you don't end up pulling too much money and once again run out of money.
I love that. Wow, so much practical advice that we can use. And family, I hope what you're hearing is that Chelly customizes her approach based on where you are in your life and how much risk you can tolerate. So there's no good or bad, right? It's just having an assessment and understanding where we are at, and then partnering with someone that is able to recognize that and then help us come up with a plan that works for our personality and our preferences. So let's switch gears a little bit, Chelly, and talk about insurance. We've talked a lot about investments. You know, one of the things that I've heard people ask, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, is, you know, what if I am impacted by COVID-19? What does that do to my insurance? Should I be worried about my insurance policy? Should I call and find out what's going on? Like, is this something that's accounted for? Or because everyone keeps hearing, hey, this is a new strand and all of this. So the question is, what, if anything, should I do insurance-wise in this situation?
Mm-hmm. One, I definitely encourage individuals to know what your PIN is. I teach my clients that there are 2 numbers that you need to know. Your PIN is your protection income number, and then your FIN is your financial independence number. So we just talked about that through investments. But your protection income number, one, you want to make sure that you have the adequate amount of insurance. And during this time, during this pandemic, that's definitely the time where I tell individuals you want to make sure that you have enough to cover what your financial obligations are. But here's the other thing, Coach Tam. We can't procrastinate about it. And I understand, I hear so many individuals all the time, they say, oh, you know, I'll get my life insurance in a couple of weeks or in a couple of months or after this situation. Life insurance is one of those things, right, where it's a benefit, not a right. And so the reason that I say that is that oftentimes, if we aren't aware, if we aren't prepared, when we have situations like this, COVID-19, a lot in the industry is continuing to change because of this COVID-19, because this is new. And so if a person has what's called a contestability period, if you've had your insurance for less than 2 years with some companies, they might not pay the death benefit. And that's important for individuals to know. And that's because if you pass within a 2-year time frame, some companies have in their contract where they only have to pay the back premium. Okay. And that could be, and the stickiness of this situation is because a person could actually be asymptomatic and carry COVID-19 without realizing it. If you get an application and you don't realize that you could have been a carrier of it, or you contract it, and not to say that it's great, but there are loopholes that unfortunately, if you don't know the right type of company to go through and read your policy's theory, and understand what it is that they have set up in their clauses. So one, you have to start with the basics. Know what your life insurance is, know what kind of insurance you have, know if there are any stipulations or exemptions or clauses pertaining to your policy. Okay. And then you want to make sure that you have the adequate amount of coverage, and then also having the right type of coverage. Within my firm, I only teach my clients about term insurance. I teach my clients you want to have time, because here's the deal about life insurance, Coach Tam. I teach my clients that life insurance was never supposed to be a forever product. Life insurance was really intended to buy us time to build and accumulate assets and pay down our debts. It's transferring risk or responsibility. So depending on what our responsibility factor is, then that'll determine how much life insurance we need, the length of term that we need it for. But for individuals that are in certain fields, if you are in what's called an essential working field, for those that maybe come from the medical field or what have you, teachers, counselors, the people that are still having to be directly involved with people, I have been encouraging my clients to make sure that they get their insurance in place, that we do not procrastinate about it, because over the last month, even within my firm, they now have questions pertaining to COVID-19. And depending on what type of occupation you are in, for the first time in history, people that are nurses or working in the healthcare field, they now can be considered risk or hazardous occupations, which could determine the underwriting process, because insurance is based off of risk, right? And so it's something to be mindful of, making sure that we have those things in place, making sure that you don't have what's called stipulation insurance. And then you also want to make sure, once again, that you don't just rely on the benefits through your company. Okay? As people are getting furloughed, this is the biggest impact that I've seen. The danger of just having benefits through your job is, if the government shuts down, if you get fired, if a company now is doing furlough, anytime companies are looking to cut expenses, where do they cut the expenses, Coach Tam?
Head count, always, people.
And so that means that those wonderful benefits that we were told to get through our job and look for, they're not guaranteed. And especially if you're here in the state of Virginia, this is a no hire state. And so we want to make sure that we have our insurance outside of our job, because what you don't want to have happen is you were relying on your insurance to your job. You now have this COVID-19 crisis, and then you end up being in a position where you have an existing condition already, and then you could have possibly contracted this.
Wow. Yeah, so family, we're definitely hearing that theme on again and again and again. Michelle has given us some very good incentives to take action now, right? It could actually impact the underwriting, right? Because things are happening fast, and we know that insurance companies have to look out for their shareholders, right? So they've got to manage risk, just like any business does. So this is not something that we want to wait on. So let's say, Michelle, that we have some people out here that, you know, they do the math and they look at their PIN and their FIN and they know, I need to make some different decisions around insurance. But, you know, they've heard what you just said, and they may think, well, maybe I shouldn't do it, though, because the underwriting is going to be different. What would you say to the person who believes in their heart they need to do something different with insurance, but might be kind of on the fence? Is now still the right time for them to buy insurance?
It is. It absolutely is. Because once again, that's one of those things. You don't want to get into an accident and then call a car insurance company and say, can you insure me? Okay, because it doesn't work that way.
Too late then.
Exactly. So you want to make sure that you can get it. You know, one, when we're in good health, once again, with the normal underwriting process, certain pre-existing conditions that you have, and we understand those that can be more vulnerable or susceptible to COVID-19 is for individuals that maybe had already had some health challenges. So that within itself is the reason that we want to make sure that we have it in place. If we are young, if we're within good health, if we have children, if we have people that depend on our income, both parents and children alike, you should make sure that you have insurance in place. You know, because no one wants to have to deal with the financial loss and an emotional loss all on the same page. And so go through, you know, the underwriting process, be very upfront and honest. You know, with my firm, we ask medical questions. We, you know, want to make sure that people are covered. And so, you know, we actually have applications of programs where a person could get qualified with our company without having to do any medical requirements, without having to do any lab work based off of their age and their overall health. And so you want to make sure that you get that in place. Now, it's always the now when you talk about life insurance, because everybody knows their birth date, Coach Tam. Nobody knows their death date. And prior to this pandemic, this is what we have to think about. I believe this pandemic, like I said, God is telling people sit down somewhere. And when we think about life, this is really helping us to evaluate and get things in place, get our household in order. Family, if we're alive, at some point in time, we're going to expire, whether it's COVID-19 or whether it's natural causes. And so for many of us, we should have already had those things in place, to be very honest, especially if we have dependents. So make sure that you have it, make sure that you have the right amount, make sure that you have the right kind of insurance, and that you also make sure that your household is properly covered.
I love that. I love that. We've got some comments here, great nuggets. You have been sharing information. I think some of it new information that we haven't heard before. And then some of it just reminders of, hey, you need to do this. Let's just stop procrastinating and take action and get it done. So let's talk about, you talked a little bit about your company. Let's say that there's someone out in the audience today and they recognize that while they do know some things, there's still a lot that they don't know. And in the interest of time, we weren't able to cover everything today. What is a way that they can get in contact with you so that they can continue the conversation? And what would that initial conversation look like? Because I know sometimes people are afraid of money. Like, how do you make that process easy for people?
So I joke with my clients and my team, and I tell people that I've probably gone on more dates in my life. And the reason I call them dates is because I tell my clients we're dating, we're courting. And so, the keys to success is making sure that we can be very transparent. I really stress to my clients that we're going to go through this process together. But the key thing is I really look to teach my clients how to be self-sufficient. And you don't have to know and understand everything that I know over the years that I've been in this industry, but I do believe in leveling the playing ground. And what I mean by that is that I don't believe in overcomplicating something that really is simple. And the financial industry has continued to make a profit off of our family and friends. Out of ignorance, we perish, right? And so I believe in leveling the playing ground, where I want them to understand what it is that they have with me and how their plan is set up. That's really the reason that I consider myself a coach and not necessarily an advisor, because an advisor is one thing, but a coach is able to really assist you so you can be the best version of you. And so it requires a certain amount of accountability. So one, I'm very open with my individuals that I meet with, transparent with them, and let them know, listen, commend yourself. Don't, beat yourself down for what you didn't know. You can't cry over spilt milk, but let's start today. Let's look at the present. Let's see what we need to do to get you on the right track and enjoy the journey. So very similar to what you do with your coaching, right? And so it's like, listen, we didn't get this weight overnight. It might feel like it from this quarantine, but listen, baby, this is a process. You put on some jeggings and it was like that thing just started stretching out and you just went into and so we got to realize that it's going to be a process with our financial journey. So trust the process, enjoy the journey, learn from the journey, and just make sure that you are giving yourself patience and grace. Give yourself grace and mercy, because we don't know what we were never taught. But the moment we change our trajectory, the moment we change our paradigm and we say, listen, I want to do better, then we'll put ourselves in an environment. There's an old Chinese proverb. It says, when a student's ready, the teacher will appear. So when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired, then we change and we'll hold ourselves accountable to it. So I want my clients to be accountable to their goals and their dreams. I want them to know that it's okay, that you're not going to be here today and be a gazillionaire tomorrow, as my niece would say.
Gazillionaire.
Right? And just allow yourself to grow.
I love that. I love that. We do have a couple of questions if you're able to hang out with us a little bit. The question is, have you heard about the $1 million baby insurance, and what is your opinion of it for parents?
Did my face, okay, so my facial expression is.
It did. I think you, okay, so hold on to your chairs, ladies and gentlemen. You're about to get the fire of Chelly Toler, but it's good that we're talking about it then.
It is. So here's the deal. It goes back to understanding the purpose. When we don't understand the purpose of things, misuse is inevitable. When we do not understand the purpose of something, misuse is inevitable, even if the intention was good. Parents don't oftentimes depend on their children's income. Children depend on their parents' income. The purpose of insurance is transferring risk or responsibility. So whatever responsibility, if I'm a breadwinner to my house, then I should be focused on making sure I have the adequate insurance on myself, because if I'm not here, if mommy or daddy are not in the picture, how will my child still be able to have food, shelter, and clothing? How would they have the car? How would they be able to afford the extracurricular activities? How could they have the cable and the PlayStations? So I should be the person that has the insurance. With my firm, I teach my clients, you don't need any more than $50,000 on a child. And the only reason that I would ever write $50,000 on a child is depending on what financial obligations they now have. If you have a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old and you just co-signed on a car, well, if you co-sign on a $15,000 car and then you have a Parent Plus loan, you want to make sure that you have the adequate life insurance on that child so that if something happens to them, those expenses will be taken care of because you're the co-signer, so now you're responsible for it. It is absurd to me that the industry once again has become so focused on making a profit that they will twist truth. And I tell my clients that a half-truth, baby, is still a lie. And so to put $1 million of coverage on a child, that means the only way that that money is intended to pay out is that child has to die, right? And so there are some amazing marketing teams. We see the cute baby, and that baby on commercials, it says for pennies a day, you can have this life insurance plan and it'll double in value once your child gets to a certain age, and you could use it to cash in or borrow from that, money. So let me also say it this way. I have my investment license, Coach Tam, and I do business in over 18 different states, and I have my insurance license. The reason that the industry requires me to have 2 separate licenses is because those are 2 separate services being rendered. Life insurance and having $1 million baby policies, that is not an investment. And for individuals to even market it to be that way as an investment where you could use it for college, or when Gerber Life says that you can, it'll double in cash value and you can borrow from it and cash it in, I won't even say it's borderline, it's illegal. I can't.
Well, you heard it there.
I'm very real and transparent. So you never want to commingle those things. If you're talking about accumulating and building assets, if you want to build assets for your children, you can set up Roth IRAs. You can set up mutual funds for a child where you become the overseer, you're the custodian, and you can set it up for the benefit of Johnny. You could set up UGMA accounts, 529 accounts. There are so many truly investment vehicles you can use without attempting to use it as a life insurance. And so when you talk about whole life insurance, when you talk about universal, all of it falls under the same aspect. They're called different names, but anytime you hear someone say that you can save inside of your policy, or you can borrow from your policy, or you could cash it in, it is nothing more than a life insurance. It is not an investment instrument because it doesn't require an investment license in a simple form.
Got it. Now, I'm seeing some comments about index universal life insurance policies. Does that term resonate with you? Can you talk to us about what that is?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was just sharing. You know, when you
Yeah.
hear of things called like universal life insurance, picture what happened to the housing market in 2008. Okay, so there are only two types of life insurance that you can purchase in the market, and they can have different names. But the core two is something called whole life and something called term insurance. Rule of thumb, if you hear people say you could cash in, borrow, or save aside of your life insurance, when you hear the industry say that you can use it as a nice rainy day savings, or Gerber Life says you can use it as a college plan, well, you can't be dead and go to college. You can't
You
do both.
you're right about that.
It's either or. So universal index, those are just fancy terminologies. Universal index, um, variable life insurance, those are the equivalent of an adjustable rate mortgage. And the reason that that was a detriment to our industry is because we understand what happened in 2008 with those types of plans. It's called universal because it's a combination of whole life and term. Well, my guy teaches me that means it's double-minded and unstable. So that means that they just wanted to sell you a whole bunch of stuff together. They said, we're going to put it all
Stay
together and then
away.
give it to the market. So when they sell those types of plans, the term portion makes it look very inexpensive, kind of like
Mm.
how you have an adjustable rate mortgage. So it looks like you have this a massive amount of coverage, $1 million policy on your child. And it looks like I'm only paying $20 a month for this $1 million policy. I have a $500,000 home. My mortgage is $500. This is awesome. But wait a minute. Mathematically, baby, that don't something wrong with that. Okay. And so what ends up happening is it balloons. And now that $1 million policy ends up going up and it adjusts. And so now it
Mm.
goes from $20 to $80 to $200 to $900 to $1,500. And when now you can't pay that premium, that cash value that they told you that you had attached to the life insurance is slowly seeping. It's pulling from the equity of the policy, just like you pull from an equity of the home. So when there's no more equity, what happens to the market? What happens to the value of the home? Goes down.
Wow.
So yes, that is the reason that I teach my clients. My firm, I only offer term insurance, 100%. I teach my clients that you want to buy term and invest the difference. And as we get older, as our responsibilities decrease, our need for life insurance should decrease as well, but our assets should increase.
Mm, I love that. So it's all about kind of what we were talking about with Jeremy. It's about strategy, right? And the truth of it is that many of us do not have the level of knowledge that we have in and of ourselves by ourselves. You've gone through all this vigorous training, you've got all these licenses, and in order to get those licenses, you had to undergo some serious studying to obtain this knowledge. So in some ways, it might be a little unrealistic to think that we can kind of figure out all these details on our own. So sometimes we have to partner with someone to get this. Stephanie says, thank you for answering. I went to an investment group that was discussing this policy as an investment for your children. So you have already made an impact on some people because it's helping them to understand the difference between investment vehicles and protection vehicles like insurance. So you have
Yeah,
already made a difference here today. I
I
know that,
love
family,
it.
we're almost at our time. Shelly, I've got to apologize to you. Somehow your website link did not make it on my list. If you have it where you can grab it and drop it in the chat or send it to me, then I will send it out to the group because I want to make sure for the action takers that are here that want to get connected with you. And here's the other thing that you should know about Chelly. She not only helps with investments and insurances and all that overall strategy, is there's an opportunity for you to become a part of her team, right? So you can talk to her about learning the things that she now knows so that it helps you come up with a strategy for yourself. But if you have a vision to add additional income, and this is an area that you're passionate about, maybe you want to help your family and your community make better financial decisions, then Chelly can also talk to you about what the income opportunity looks like because that could be something that would be very interesting for you and maybe help with some of your other goals. Like Jeremy talked to us about paying down that debt, right? It wasn't a sexy answer. He had to find a way to create additional income, and then he used the income that he had and he put it on his debt, right? So perhaps one of the answers, we've talked to Shannon about starting an online business. We've talked to Crystal about short-term rentals. Also talked to Chelly about the opportunities that exist in joining her team, even though she's in Virginia. So she's part of my VA fam. Even though she's in Virginia, she has a team here in Charlotte, and she services the North Carolina area. So no matter where you are, if it's not her, she can get you connected with someone that is able to help you. So Chelly, if you can grab that link, and we'll get it out to the family here so that they'll have that. And also we will make sure, family, that we send out the links for all of our participants. You will get the links to their website. You will get their one of their handouts where they have shared some practical tips with you today. So we want to make sure that you have that information. We also it will be on Monday because we'll need some time to do some editing, but we're going to make sure that you get the replay for each of the individual sessions. So you will be able to go in under each presenter and actually listen to their session, so that maybe you need to refresh yourself on what has been shared here today. I want you to be able to do that and to share it with other people, right? So one of the things that I hope you do is one of your do it now, right? Is not just take what you've learned and take action for yourself, but take what you've learned. You don't have to be an expert. All you've got to do is forward the link. The email comes out, all you got to do is hit forward and put all those little email addresses of all the people that you know need this, and let Chelly explain about insurance and investments, let Jeremy talk about debt and getting your emergency fund, your sinking fund. Let the experts do the talking. But one way that you can help others is just by sharing the information. Now, I want to hear, but for those of you that have hung in with us all day, talk to us about our lineup, our sessions today. Has this been a blessing to you? It was our hope and our prayer that by us coming together and talking about these various topics, from spiritual growth to starting a business to getting our money right, that it would equip and empower you to be able to make some different decisions. I have a motto, and this is something that I'm serious about. I want to be better than before on the other side of this pandemic. I don't want to just look back on 2020 and talk about the fact that we had the pandemic and all the impacts and all the financial things that happened. I want to be able to look back on this moment and this time and say that there were some major shifts in my life. And as a result of it, even though I may not be super excited about, staying at home and quarantine, but I want to be able to look back and see I saw God move. And get this, what we've heard from all of our presenters is it's not enough to pray and ask God to help us. We have to partner with God in taking action. So one of the things that I've learned is sometimes I think I am waiting on God, and God is in fact waiting on me to make a move. So I want you to assess right now, has God already told you something to do? If he's already told you something to do, then you're not waiting on God. You're not waiting on God for the strength and for the connections to do it. He's looking for you to start taking action, to start walking in the direction of your dreams. And as you walk in the direction of your dreams, that's when he promises to meet you and give you your next step, to provide you with the connections, with the resources that you need. I'm not going to take you to church, but I will point out something, right? We see lots of scriptures, but I want you to know every miracle, I want you to go look. It always required something of the person. It was not just, I'm going to pray to God and I'm going to ask him to help me. Even the man that was by the pool was like, do you want to get healed? First of all, do you want to get healed? Okay, because sometimes if we're honest, we'd rather talk about our situation and actually take action, right? So he had to first ask the question, do you want to be healed? And then he challenged him to pick up his bed and walk. If he hadn't taken action, there would be no miracle for us to read. With the 10 lepers who cried out for Jesus to help them, he told them, I want you to go show yourself to the priest, right? And I want you to know that nothing happened. So at the time that they're in an encounter with Jesus, they still were lepers. And we don't know how far they got in their journey before they saw a difference. For all we know, it could have been right into the moment where they see the priest right there. And they had to go all that way. And they had to listen to all of the voices in their head that said, this is not working for me. I'm invested. Why am I walking down here? I don't know if he really is all who he says he is. They had to deal with all that. But you know what? Despite all of those voices in their head, they kept going. And by the time, what scripture tells us, praise God, is by the time they got to the priest, we don't know how long it took, but by the time they got there, they were in fact healed. But if they had not taken action, if they had not started taking steps in the direction of their dreams, there would be no miracle for us to read. And the same is true for you, family. In order for you to get the miracle that you are praying for, the deliverance that you're expecting to see in your finances, if you want to lose the weight and keep it off this time, if you want your finances to level up and you want your relationship with God to go to a deeper level, you must take action. You must take action. You must partner with God to bring about your miracle. You've got to be an active participant in your own deliverance. And so I believe that we've done our part today by providing you with the inspiration, the motivation, some tools and resources, and we've got more things coming your way. But what we're counting on you to now do, now that we've invested the time and the energy in you, we are counting on you